In this video, I'm going to share with you exactly why you struggle to scale past $50,000 per month wholesaling real estate. And the reason why I know this is because over the last 5 years, we've worked with clients doing anywhere from 2 deals per month on the low end to as many as 40 deals per month on the high end. So I've seen everything in between: the good, the bad, the ugly, the messy parts, all of it. So the biggest difference about this video is that I'm not going to talk about your sales, your marketing, your data, your team building. You can watch that in all these other videos. More importantly, in this video, I want to talk about the scaling thesis and how we operate behind the scenes that help us get to a point where we deserve and can actually scale to $300,000 per month, right? So I sort of want to set the stage. If I were to sit down with you right now and ask you, what is preventing you from hitting $300,000 per month with at least a 40% profit margin? You might tell me it's your leads. That's the most common one. You might tell me your acquisition managers suck. You might tell me it's because your dispositions, there's no buyers for your deals. Maybe you're just locking them up too high, or you don't know. And that's okay, because in this video, we're gonna be covering these 3 things, right? So the first thing we're gonna be covering is the 3 pillars to build a business that can operate without you, and make sure that as you scale, you yourself do not become the constraint, the thing that's holding the company back. The second thing is how to get more out for what you put in. In this case, it's leverage. So we're going to be talking about the mindset behind delegating, investing as opposed to just saving. We're going to be talking about leverage on labor, right? So how to maximize the talent that you have on your team to make you and them more money. And finally, we're going to talk about what to do when your company's growth has stagnated or plateaued, right? It's most likely because you're not taking enough risk. Before we dive into the iPad, I want to share what my operating thesis is and how I think about scaling businesses, whether it's for myself, my clients, or even my friends, right? You don't win bigger by doing more of what got you here. You win bigger by becoming the person who is able to build a machine that runs without you. Everybody gets into entrepreneurship for many different reasons, but most of them have the same common theme, right? It's money or it's freedom, right? So if we were to talk about the money side, the trap that we don't want to fall into is making a lot of money but having no time. That defeats the point. And on the contrary, we don't want to have all the time in the world and no money. You can't do anything. So we want to mix up both. And that's why most people that I speak to build a business, including me. So with that said, let's go over to the iPad and talk about the 3 pillars that is required to build a business that serves you. I call this CBS, right? So character, beliefs, and skill sets, right? It is my personal opinion that these are the 3 things that hold anybody back or propel them to the next level. From my experience, right? You could scale with only 2 out of 3 of these, and then you'll hit a constraint. But in order to unlock that constraint and scale past that bottleneck, hold up, whatever the case is, you need to unlock the 3rd pillar. I'll give you a perfect example. If you are an asshole, but you have the right belief systems, so you have a good mindset, and you have the skills, so you could sell, you could close deals, you can hire people, you can negotiate, you will make money. That is a promise I make you. But what happens when you get to the point where you want to do JV opportunities, right? Bring on friends, build on a community, etc. If you're an asshole, nobody's going to want to do business with you because of that. That is the constraint. So again, 2 out of the 3, you could scale with it, but you'll hit a plateau. And then in order to scale past that plateau, you need to solve the final constraint. So you need everything, obviously, right? So let's explain and break down what each of these pillars are, right? Starting with character. Simple terms is who you are as a person, right? Your reputation, not only within the industry with other investors, other wholesalers, other vendors, but also your reputation in your community or in your markets, as well as how sellers look at you, right? So if you have shitty reviews, for example, your reputation is going to get tarnished, and that's not going to look good, right? The second thing is beliefs. What is your point of view on subjects? This is the easiest way that I can break it down. The formal definition is subjective attitudes or convictions that something is true, most likely influenced by one's personal or shared experiences, right? So your belief could be your team sucks, right? Or inbound marketing doesn't work because it's too expensive. Or I have to work to make more money. At the end of the day, these are all beliefs and what I would like to refer as limiting beliefs that are holding you back. For example, let's fight and tackle each one of these right now. Your team sucks. Who hired them? You hired them, so it's your fault, right? Your team doesn't suck. You do. So get better at hiring, and then maybe your team won't suck and you'll make more money. It's that simple. Not easy. I said it was simple. The second thing, inbound marketing doesn't work because it's too expensive. There's two things. Either the agency you're working with sucks. If they do, my link's in the description. Just click on it and schedule a call. Or it's too expensive. Too expensive compared to what? If it's compared to what you're doing right now, like let's say it's cold calling, fine, it would be. But is it getting you the returns that you want, right? If it's not, then okay, makes sense. But if it's expensive compared to what you're doing in the past, okay, do what you did in the past, and if you can't do more of it, fine, you have to try something else. And the final one is I have to work more to make more money. No, you don't. You just don't know how to hire people yet, right? You are probably a slave in your CRM, and that sucks. You have to dial people all day. You got to deal with sellers who want to back out of deals and buyers that, are flaky. It sucks. But the best part about business is that you don't have to deal with that. You just have to create a process and hire the right people to handle that. So with beliefs, they can either help you or they can hurt you, right? Most of these are ways that they can hurt you. If you have good beliefs, right? Like beneficial beliefs, like I know I need to JV with people and connect with people to scale my business. That is a great belief, right? Or all marketing channels work. That is a great belief because the person that's saying that is absolutely correct. All marketing channels do work. It's just to what extent? And do they contribute to the goals that you want in your business, right? For example, in your business, if you want only inbound, don't do cold calling. It's outbound, right? And vice versa, right? Or another one is like, I want to build a lean and mean team. It's funny because last week I was speaking to a husband and wife wholesaler, and the husband was like, dude, we just got an office and I want to fill like 5 acquisition managers. Mind you, they're doing 2 deals per month. So I was like, why do you need 5 acquisition managers? It just makes no sense, right? And I found out that like he just wants to fill seats. His wife, on the other hand, wants a lean and mean operation, which obviously stood out as a red flag because they're husband and wife. They're not aligned. Anyways, that's a topic for another day. But the point I'm trying to make here is that everybody has limiting beliefs. Some of them benefit you, some of them hurt you. But going back to this analogy, having or even wanting a lean and mean operation is good, right? Because you want to be high profit, lower stress. It's not little stress, but lower stress, right? So again, they can hurt you or they can help you. And one thing that I've learned from my personal experience is that most of your beliefs, like I said earlier, are influenced by either personal experiences or shared experience. So if a friend tells you something, they will influence you into having this belief. It's how humans work. The second thing is that when you meet the right person or mentor, they will be able to reframe all of your limiting beliefs, right? And the entire goal of this is that you operate off of your beliefs and your mindset. So if you hire the right mentor or just work with the right person, they will give you the right beliefs and mindset as to how to operate and actually scale the business. The final thing is skill set. Easiest way to break this is core competencies to get the job done. So in this case, it's very easy. Sales, hiring management, project management, and marketing, right? If you build a business with all 3 of this, I will almost guarantee you that you will succeed, right? Because if you think about it, I don't believe that there's anything more to this than skill sets, solid beliefs, and a good character, right? So these are the 3 pillars that I believe make a business not only successful financially, but running smoothly, right? I'll give you another example. I know a wholesaler back in the day where the company was profitable, not as much as he wanted, but it was still profitable. He had a team. He was automated from the business, but the guy was an absolute asshole, right? I'm not going to say who it is, obviously, but he was not a good leader. He basically operated as a dictator. And as a result, that energy, that negativity bleeded into his team. And, in the short term, they made money, but in the long term, that company obviously blew up, right? Just because of one person and how he operates. So with that said, I want to dive into the next thing about how to get more out for what you put in, right? This is leverage. So if you put 1 input, how can you get 2 out, right? So in order to understand leverage and how to use it, you actually have to break it down and identify or define what it actually is. So here's how I identify leverage, right? There's 5 pieces or categories, pillars of leverage. There's who you know, which is your network, right? So you know the saying, it's not what you know till you know. That's that. Second thing is capital, right? Leverage on capital. If you put $1 in and you get $3 out, that is leverage. You get more out for what you put in, right? An outsized return compared to the input. Media, right? In this case, it's content. If you post a YouTube video, for example, you post a video once and it's on the internet forever, a bunch of people watch it, they're going to possibly JV with you, they're probably going to do coaching with you, whatever the case is. That is leverage on media. The other thing is software, right? A CRM is the most common software, data tracking. You set it up once and it just runs. For example, a nurture sequence, a drip campaign, right? You set it up once, you click live, and it just runs forever. That is leverage. That way you don't have to manually follow up with every single person. That would suck, and it's boring. A final thing is labor, right? This labor, the way I define it, is labor in the sense of people on your team. It's just talent, right? So like I said, the perfect example on labor is you building an SOP once, your team implements it consistently, and you trade up your newfound time to do bigger, higher leverage things. For example, the first pillar of every wholesaling business is marketing. Once you figure that out, you can hire somebody to do the marketing. That way you can focus on maybe closing the deals, right? It's higher leverage than, let's say for cold calling people all day and pulling lists, all that bullshit, right? It sucks. That is leverage. And then once you leverage and outsource that thing, you trade up. So it's sales, closing deals, getting contracts. Once you have a process and install the right person in place, an acquisition manager, to actually close the deals for you, you could trade your way up into maybe dispoing, right? Selling these deals. Once you dispo that, maybe you hire a manager and train him. That way you can go do whatever else you want, right? You can start another company, you can scale into different markets, build a different pods, etc. That is leverage on your time and leverage on labor, right? So I want to dive and share what I call the leverage ladder. And basically this is what the timeline or the stages look like of a wholesaler whenever they're starting from zero leverage to when they have the most amount of leverage within their company. The first thing is 0 to 30K a month, right? So this is give or take around 1 to maybe 3 deals per month, right? You have virtually zero leverage. Why? Because it's you doing everything, right? You're doing all the grunt work, you're doing all the marketing, you're taking all the appointments with the sellers, for example. You're doing all the dispo, transaction coordinating, all of that, right? You're doing all the grunt work basically. So the leverage ratio on that is 1 to 1. For every input you put in, right? For every action you do, for every hour you work, you get 1 hour of result from your work. It's 1 to 1. It sucks. Everybody starts here. Everybody's been here. It gets better, I promise you, right? The second part is when you start to learn a little bit about leverage. You're like, damn, this feels a lot better. I can actually breathe. I can do something with my time now. And this stage, I believe, is $30,000 to $100,000 per month. So this, you're doing around 3 to maybe 5 to 8 deals per month, give or take, right? And maybe 1 or 2 VAs. You might have someone doing the cold calling, and you may have somebody maybe as a lead manager, or someone on the dispo side, whatever the case is, right? You have a few softwares and few automations. So you got your CRM set up, you got your drip sequences, whatever the case is, maybe data tracking's automated, things like that, right? So you're like, okay, now you're starting to get some traction. You're moving a little bit faster. You're stepping away, like I said, from doing all the grunt work and getting to a point where you're starting to trade up, right? Because you have VAs who you delegated some of the boring admin tasks to, you could trade your way up. This is when the fun starts to happen. Where the fun really happens, obviously, is when you have the most amount of leverage, which I believe is around $100,000 to $300,000 per month, right? Most of the time, you have a team in place. You have an acquisition manager, right? You have a disposition manager, and you might be just managing them. You're stepping into the role of becoming a manager and or a leader, right? So again, that's a skill. Once you trade up, you can install a leader, etc., right? So at this stage, most of the time you are investing into software, marketing, infrastructure to scale, right? You have a network of other people to do it with. So in this case, it's going to be, maybe JV partners, a talent pool, whatever the case is. And most of the time, people at this stage are starting to leverage media as well, right? So they're trying to build their brand, get their name out there, try to get sellers to come in, a little bit on SEO, a little bit on Instagram and Facebook, wherever the case is, right? A funny thing is we have clients doing $100,000 per month just solo. So it's just them. Do they have leverage? No, they don't. They're doing all the grunt work. So one thing I've realized after working with wholesalers over the last 5 years is that many of them don't have leverage because of their limiting beliefs, right? They can do everything themselves. Nobody can close better than they can. Trust me, you're not the best closer out there. Someone is better than you. You just have to find a way to convince them to come work for you. I'll give you a perfect example. The guy that is dominating your market, your biggest competitor, I promise you he has an acquisition manager. That guy could probably close better than you. Because if you could close better than him, you might be making more money than them. But apparently you're not, which is why you're not the biggest guy. Anyways, the reason I share that is because there's always someone that's better. We just have to find a way to convince them to come work for you. I fell into this limiting belief and it caused me to be stuck for over a year in my business myself, right? Because I thought I was the best closer. I thought I was the best media buyer, etc. Until I found people that were better than me. Number one, it was a sigh of relief. And number two, it was also a pretty humbling moment because it's like, cool, there are people that are better than you. And in my personal opinion, I think that's a good thing due to the fact that it's like, this is what we want, right? We want to hire people that are better than us. That way we can train them. Because another thing I'll share with you is that if you are on the top of the knowledge stack within your company, if you're the smartest person in your company, the company's growth is limited by your intelligence. But if you have the people that are actually smarter than you, can actually operate the company a lot better than you, now you're surrounded by a bunch of geniuses, which will scale your company a lot faster. It's uncomfortable at first. It is humbling, but it is very rewarding from my personal experience, right? A bonus, delegating your weaknesses and focusing on your strengths. A big common one that I see since I run an agency as an example is like wholesalers saying, oh, I am an amazing closer, and instead of hiring you as an agency, why don't I just run it yourself? You can run it yourself. It's just, it took me 5 years and millions of dollars in ad spend to figure out exactly what's working. Also, we have data sets as to what's working, what markets, what keywords, what landing page structure, sales process, etc. as to what's working. You can figure it out all yourself. Like, I promise you, if I could figure it out, you could figure it out yourself. But it's like, do you have the time, right? And if you don't, that's why people hire us. So, for example, if you're watching this and you know that your specialty is acquisitions, closing deals, stop wasting your time doing anything else that is not that, right? If you don't want to do the marketing, you don't like doing the marketing and it's your weakness, why are you doing it? Like, it makes no sense, right? Same thing with tech. Like, if setting up CRM integrations, drip campaigns is not your bread and butter and something you just genuinely don't want to do or learn, pay somebody to do it. It's way faster. They'll get it done right the first time as opposed to you having to do all these iterations. It sucks, trust me. So just focus on your strengths. Whatever your weaknesses are, forget about them, right? Don't forget, outsource them is what I meant. And the reason why, on top of that, is activation energy. If you are a 7 out of 10 closing, but a 0 out of 10 on marketing, why not just you're closer to being a 10 on closing than closer to being a 10 on marketing because you're starting from scratch. So there's more activation energy. So it's better to just focus on what you're good at. Stay on your lane, right? Second thing is return on time to effort is low leverage. Can you figure out marketing? Is it high leverage? Yes. But it's like long-term, do you also want to be running the ads? Probably not, which is why I'm still in business. So that's something I've noticed. Another thing, labor, right? Something that I'm surprised that many people don't focus on is the revenue per employee. And what this metric is, or what it tells me, is how efficient your team and your company is based off of the number of people and the revenue they generate within your company. For example, if your company does $1.2 million a year in revenue, right? So that's about $100,000 per month, and you have 5 people, your revenue, let's just use $1 million for easy numbers, right? So million divided by 5 people on your team, that is $200,000. Divide that by 12 is what, like a little less than $20,000 per month, right? So whatever you're paying, whatever the average salary of your team is, divide the average revenue per employee divided by what you're paying them. That is your return on labor, right? Everybody talks about return on investment, ROAS, return on ad spend, but what about return on labor? Because you're still spending money on labor. Might as well get a return from it. So I look at revenue per employee, and this tells me basically how efficient a company is. Because, for example, if you're doing $1 million a year and you got 2 people on your team, your revenue per employee is $500,000. It's very profitable. That means you have an amazing team. Because if you had $1 million in revenue and you had 20 people, your revenue per employee is like 50 grand. So that just tells me your team sucks, in my personal opinion, right? You do whatever you want. It's your business. And finally, I want to talk about my constraint diagnosis framework that I use to pinpoint the problem in any business. The way I define a constraint is that a business will grow up into its constraint and grow no further until that constraint is solved, right? And in order to solve the constraint, we first have to identify what the constraint is and dive deep into understanding what we need to do to solve that constraint, right? So, like I said, you can't scale because you've encountered a constraint. You're stuck because you're working on the wrong constraint. I will give a perfect example in a bit here, but I'll leave that for now. So whenever it comes to finding a constraint, I have 3 rules. Number 1 is what will break first if you 10x the output on the top of the funnel. I'll explain why in a second. The second thing is, what is the weakest link within your company? What is the weakest metric compared to industry benchmarks within your company? And the third thing, and most common one, where most people get messed up, is the constraint the true constraint, right? Perfect example of number 1. What will break first if you 10x the output on top of funnel? So the example for that is if you 10x your marketing spend, right? You take your ad spend, let's say you're spending 10 grand and you multiply it by 10. So that's $100,000 per month, just for the sake of understanding. You're going to get a ton of leads, right? Figuratively. But you only have one acquisition manager. So the constraint then becomes, it's not that lead flow is an issue, or maybe even lead quality in this case. It's the fact that you have one acquisition manager that is managing $100,000 per month in ad spend. That is very risky. Number 1, that guy's going to burn out. And number 2, there's going to be diminishing returns in the sense where he is not going to close as well because he has so many leads. So yeah, he doesn't have to put as much effort into each lead, right? So in this case, the constraint is that the acquisition manager booked rate is too high, right? So the constraint is that you don't have enough talent. So in order to solve this, what do? You hire more people. Right? So let's say $100,000, you could probably get away with 3 to 5 acquisition managers is a decent number for $100,000 per month in ad spend. I'm just using this as an example, right? So the second thing is identifying the weakest link compared to industry benchmarks. So I have a graph of some numbers and KPIs, and I want to walk you through my process when it comes to diagnosing a business and defining its true constraints. So click-through rate, for example, is 1.5%. To me, that's perfectly within KPI. Technically, we want to be around 2%, but 1.5 is fine. Landing page conversion rate, a little lower. It's 15% on Google. I know some other agencies are happy with it. 10% is their conversion rate. I aim for anything above 20%. That's where I want to be personally. Our lead to contract is 1 out of 10. We're doing PPC. It's 1 out of 10 standard KPIs. Our contract to close, right? This is the one that I want to look at. Is 30%. Meaning for every 10 contracts you lock up, only 3 of them go through, right? 30%. That is relatively low. Most of the time, people are around like 70, 80%. So this is like half of what KPI should be. No good, right? Average assignment fee, $15,000. It's industry average, right? So the challenge here is that people will complain that the constraint in this case is that they're dispo. So they'll blame the dispo, say, hey, you're not working hard enough, yada, yada, yada. But turns out that's not the actual constraint, right? So let's bring this down here. We've identified contract to close is the biggest constraint. And if you don't know what I mean by this, is basically how many contracts go to the closing table. Easy, right? So the wholesaler will say, oh, dispo is my biggest issue. We're getting all these deals, but no buyers, right? So cool, we identified the constraint. Now let's go about how to actually solve it. And this is one of the most common ones that I see, right? So the first thing I like to ask a client is, hey, what is the feedback that the buyers are giving? Most of the time, it's like, oh, the deal's locked up too high, or it's just not a good deal. There's not enough spread for them, whatever the case is. Cool. Then we dive a step deeper. Is this deal properly priced based off of buyer feedback? No, it is not, right? It's priced too high, right? So the numbers don't make sense and it's priced incorrectly. And the final thing is that, are there no buyers in the market, right? Is it just that there's no buyers? You're in the boonies, whatever the case is. No, that's not the issue. There are buyers because you got feedback. So that wouldn't make sense. So the answer to this is, from what I see, it's always an underwriting issue. But that's a surface level issue because, okay, if we identify it's an underwriting issue, do we just train our acquisition managers how to underwrite better? Yes, but that's not the 80-20, if you would. It's not going to make the most impact. Why? So we asked the acquisition manager, why are these deals locked up too high? They're typically going to say, not typically, they always say, acquisition says the leads are not motivated. Okay, that's very relative. So is the constraint that there are no buyers and you have a disposition issue, or is it an acquisition/marketing issue? Simple. We identified that dispo is not the issue. Your underwriting was because the leads aren't motivated. Conclusion, your marketing is the issue. So let's backtest this and run this idea through. If we have great marketing, right, the leads are coming in, good solid flow, they're motivated, acquisitions locks them up at a realistic price because, they don't have to, lock it up too high because the leads are actually motivated, canceling out the fact that it's an underwriting issue and the deals actually close, right? So it's like a domino effect. Because of that, we found out marketing is the issue. So take that, go into your business, backtest things, make sure that the constraint you believe is the actual constraint is the constraint. I'll give you another one. Everybody says lead flow or lead quality is their biggest constraint. Fine, let's look at the leads. What do we define as a quality lead? For me, I go off of the 4 main pillars. So motivation, timeline, property info, asking price. If they check these boxes, cool, they're a qualified lead. But the sales team can't close them. That's a sales issue, right? If sales can't close them, Dispo doesn't have anything to sell. Or if they lock it up too high, Dispo can't sell them. So it's like one thing affects 2 to 3 different departments in the company, which is why it's so important to identify exactly what the constraint is and go a step deeper to ensure and double check that that constraint is the real constraint, right? So, like I said, a solution, once you've identified your constraint, understand that your business will not grow until it is solved. So, what does this mean once we've found the constraint and have an idea of what the solution could be? We focus a majority of our time into solving this constraint. So, if marketing is a constraint, put all your time, energy, resources into improving your marketing, getting better marketing, because if you get better marketing, everything else in the business is taken care of. Leverage. So that is it for this entire video. I hope it gives you context and clarity as to how there's more to it than just blaming the leads, just blaming your sales process, just blaming the fact that you don't have the biggest, most expensive buyers list, but it's actually things that you can work on right now. For example, your characters, your character traits, your skill sets, your beliefs, those are things that you can actually work on right now. Easiest way for beliefs and skill sets, as an example, is to sell yourself on changing. Because in order to change in the business or yourself, you have to change. Change requires change, right? The second thing is leverage. Can you scale a business without leverage? Absolutely. Is that something you want to do? I don't know. It might be, but for me and my clients, the answer is no. And finally, solving problems. Business is always going to have problems. And I'll tell you something funny. If I go, and maybe you could take this as well, if I go to a business event and I, meet somebody and I ask them how business is going and they tell me everything's spectacular and things are perfect, they are lying to you, right? Nothing in business is ever perfect. There's always going to be a constraint because if there were no problems in business, everybody's going to be a billionaire and life will be amazing, right? So every business has a problem. It will not, until you solve that problem, the business will not grow much further. So with that said, if you're an investor closing out at least 2 deals per month and you want us to implement all the processes and frameworks into your business, that way you guys can scale to $200,000 to even $300,000 per month profitably and consistently, click the link below in the description, schedule a call with either me or a member of my team. And I love the opportunity to walk you through exactly how it works with your markets, your numbers, all that good stuff. And with that said, my name is Ben, CEO and founder here at Bolt Deals, and I will see you in the next video.